Welcome to the TOCA Backstage podcast. Join TOCA's Executive Director, Chris Wolf, in conversations with the artists and people behind the scenes of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation's performances and events.
Welcome to another edition of Backstage with TOCA. My name is Chris Wolf, the Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. It is my honor to have with us today Shannon Curtis and Jamie Hill, right? From 80s Kids, which will be at the Armstrong Theater on Saturday, October 4th at 8 p.m. Thank you both for joining me. Appreciate it.
We're so happy to be here.
Good to see you.
And so, as I understand it, you guys just got off the road for a long tour.
We did. Yeah, we were out for 2.5 or so months.
24 cities all across the U.S.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yet you look so fresh and revived. I watch you on social, I keep track of you on social media, and I have to say, the concerts, I mean, you put it all out there on the show. Tell me, what was the inspiration behind 80s Kids? Why 80s music?
Yeah, for a long time, we grew up in the 80s and we grew up on this music. And Jamie and I have been together and doing music together for almost 20 years. And for almost all of that time, we've been keeping a list in our phone about songs from our 80s childhoods that maybe one day wouldn't it be fun to record our own versions of and all that. And because we've been doing original music that entire time. And then a couple of years ago, we had an opportunity to just start making our way down that list and recorded the first one, and people kind of freaked out about it. So we're like, well, let's keep going. And we ended up with an album worth of songs. And once we had an album worth of songs, we're like, well, this ought to be a really fun show. And so we put together the 80s Kids show. And so it was not really anything that we set out to do as a plan, but it was something that's sort of been in the back of our minds for a long time. And so we've been kind of chipping away at it the last few years. And we got to debut the first 80s Kids show this past spring. And it was just amazing. And it came at a time that just felt like was so good for us. It's such a joyful experience. And
we thought we might be doing this show under different conditions in 2025. We thought it might be sort of a joyful celebration of putting an era behind us. It didn't turn out to be that, but the show has been actually maybe more valuable in this unfortunate context, just because it's become a real center for joy for people, a real way for people to escape for an evening and find community.
Awesome. And then, I think, well, okay, I'm obviously a lot older than you guys. I didn't grow up in the 80s, but I survived the 80s. What is it about 80s music to you that really sort of resonates? Because I know as a presenter, somebody who books talent for performing arts centers, I've often been told, oh, you should get 80s, this 80s group or this 80s group. And I'm like, okay, so why 80s music?
Yeah, so for me, well, for both of us, we grew up in the 80s. This is going to sound dark for a minute. Just stick with me though, okay? I remember growing up in the 80s and having nightmares about the movie The Day After that was made for TV. Did you watch the movie? Did you see it?
Oh yeah.
So I was a kid and I didn't actually get to see the movie. I just saw the advertisements for months before that film was on TV. And those advertisements gave me nightmares.
Me too.
And it's a weird thing to say, but a few years ago when the war in Ukraine started, I started having those nightmares again. I'm like, what is this all about? But it made me realize that as a kid, there was so much going on in the world, the threat of potential nuclear annihilation being one thing. But there was so much going on in the world that as a kid, I just didn't have the capacity to process or understand. But and also in my own little tiny world, there was so much that I had going on that I couldn't process and understand. And stuff going on with my family that was crazy, and just feeling oftentimes as a kid, and I know this is not a unique experience, but as a kid, you just feel like you are just this total outsider, sometimes, where you've where do I fit in? And for me, given all of these different culture, the big cultural world things, the stuff in my family, stuff happening in my own pre-adolescent brain. Music was such an escape from all of that. It made me feel connected to something outside of myself that was meaningful. And I think, music is that no matter what generation you're from, it serves that function.
I will say this though about 80s music in specific. We just happened to grow up at a really interesting time in the evolution of technology. Like when we were kids and growing up with this music, about every 2 weeks, they were inventing a new drum machine or a new synthesizer, which meant that there was a new palette of sounds that had literally never been heard anywhere before ever in the history of the earth. And so I think maybe that aspect of it made it the music of that time maybe be a little bit more sort of technicolor and a little bit more like of a refuge or an escape because it painted a world that none of us had ever seen before, which made it sort of easier to escape deeper into in a way.
It's interesting, yeah.
Well, okay, you brought up a couple of interesting points. First of all, I want to address the nuclear annihilation. We promise we promise you that we'll make this a happy conversation, but you're right, because there was the day after there was, or whatever that movie was, there was the one with Matthew Broderick and
War Games.
War Games. It's funny because it's like, I guess after the Cold War, it's kind of like you don't remember that. Well, you remember it, but it's not in your daily life, especially with all the other political stuff happening. But like, for example, in the 60s and 70s, there was the Vietnam War protests, marches, and there was music that was created in response to that.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about 80s music, and please jump and correct me if I'm wrong, there was this stuff happening, but the music wasn't necessarily responding to that, was it?
I would maybe it was responding in a different way, I think. And I think that this is encapsulated in sort of what I sort of consider sort of like maybe the heart and soul of this 80s Kids project for us is the song Forever Young. It's the song by Alphaville. Yeah. Let's dance in style, let's dance for a while. Heaven can wait, we're only watching the skies. Hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Are you gonna drop the bomb or not? Like it's this beautiful song about like there's all this stuff happening out there that we just feel powerless to influence or change and we might not get through. We're not even sure, but we're gonna dance together. We're gonna enjoy this moment that we have with each other, and we're going to squeeze all of the joy we can out of it with one another. I think that was the response. Maybe it was not as much of an on the nose response as maybe some of like the, protest music of the 60s and 70s. But it was a response nonetheless of like, we're going to find and grab hold of our power where we have it. And that is in creating and experiencing as much joy as we can with each other.
Maybe a less literal and more sort of artistically evolved response, if that makes sense. I mean, standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Because the protest music of the, 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s was all extremely powerful in its own way, like so resonant, so defining of an entire zeitgeist. But it strikes me that there had been so much protest music by the 80s, like so many decades of it, that this was sort of
like turning something new.
Yeah, seriously, like a really evolved and new way of expressing solidarity and finding community.
That makes sense. I can buy that. It's funny because literally just last night I was watching a thing on PBS about Live Aid and how that
40th anniversary.
Yeah, how that sort of all evolved, and that was a response to something very tragic. But again, using music as the response. And, in the 60s and 70s, there was, Crosby, Stills and Nash, there was Woodstock, there was, so I guess the 80s would be like Live Aid, like, wasn't Lollapalooza or one of the Palooza.
That was 1990 was the first one.
But they probably started thinking about it in the 80s.
Born out of it for sure,
Mhm.
yeah. And there was USA for Africa, right? And there were all these sort of music-oriented kind of global support slash protest slash uplift moments, you know?
How could we forget We Are the World?
Right?
Hands across America.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Do they know it's Christmas?
So I know in your show description there's the word synth pop.
Mhm.
Jamie, I've been meaning to ask you, what the heck is synth pop?
I'm so happy you asked. So synth pop is a specific style of music that was based around the purposeful use of synthesizers and the purposeful lack of guitars is a good way to put it. Because there were all these new instruments, and I think a lot of people, especially a lot of the sort of arty, punky kind of kids at the time, I think they were just kind of bored with their parents' music. They wanted to do something new. I mean, every generation's youth wants to do something new, but the advent of all these new instruments gave them an extreme way to do that in a way that really hadn't ever been available before. Because for the first time ever, you could have a band with no one playing a stringed instrument. And so a lot of people just took advantage of that just as a way of intentionally making something new. And what came out of it, probably because of like the artistic crossover, artists, of course, are pretty emotionally in tune people oftentimes. And so what came out of it was what we like to term the John Hughes wing of the 80s, you know, the real sort of heart on the sleeve emotional stuff. There was obviously a lot of really fluffy, poppy, you know, girls singing about boys, boys singing about girls stuff happening in the 80s too.
Boys singing about boys.
Hey, absolutely. You know, that was a thing that we could do in the 80s too. So exciting. But, you know, the synth pop stuff to me was always the stuff that was the most solace to me as I was an emotionally confused teen trying to find my way. It's the stuff that spoke to that doubt and that confusion and that those hopes and those dreams, you know, but did so in such a neon technicolor way. There's something really powerful to me still about talking about your more deeply held, more privately held emotions in a way that's dressed up in such beautiful sound.
And the live presentation of that, like you think back at on like Pet Shop Boys, they were a duo. They'd get up on stage and was one person behind a keyboard and a bank of synthesizers and drum machines and a vocalist out front, you know, doing their bit. There were other bands like this too, but like
Erasure, Alphaville, many others.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a lot. This is how they performed. The way that we're performing is like really true to what the synth pop movement was doing in the 80s then too.
It's a really kind of there was a lot of minimalism in that moment, you know. You can hear it in the arrangements of the music, really intentional sounds, but sort of fewer of them, creating this big, huge, gorgeous sort of synthesizer orchestra, but with relatively fewer instruments because synthesizers could make kind of more complex sounds, you know? And there was a real movement at that time too to be very stripped back on stage, really making the focus be more about the music and more about the art.
Well, and that brings up the point that, I mean, this show really is you two, and a lot of visual elements from projections to where, like the Aha song, Take On Me, it's like you're literally watching the video just about because of the video behind you, and so how do you recreate all that sound with just two people on stage?
Oh my gosh. It's so it first starts off with like we make recordings first, right?
Like the studio recordings.
So because that's where we're learning about like, I mean, and Jamie goes into like deep like audio forensics about like where were these songs recorded, what studios were they in, what synthesizers were available to them, what, you know, like he does like hours and hours and hours of research on every single song.
More like days in some cases.
So that he can get the exact, you know, authentic like representation of what they did and trying to bring it into, you know, our
Like a modern context.
Modern context. Yeah. So that's where it starts. And then I also record, like I go through and record all the vocals for recordings too, just like, so we really get to know these songs in the process of making studio recordings of them. Like we know them intimately because of that. And then when for the show's purpose, we back out the things from the track that we're going to be performing live. So there are some synthesizer parts that Jamie's performing live. I'm obviously singing all the vocals live, and he's doing backup vocals as well. But we start with, this deep dive recording of the music first, and then adapting that for the stage.
So really, to answer your question the most directly, there's backing tracks, again, very true to the idiom. Famously, Depeche Mode had their 8-track reel-to-reel recorder sitting on the side of the stage.
That's so cool.
I know, right? It was amazing. They really made it be sort of like a part of the band, because the point wasn't, is everybody playing an instrument? That's not the point at all. The point is the music in this case. And nothing against like rigorous live performance. Shannon and I are devoted fans of bands. We go to see bands all the time. And there's something amazing about a great live band, of course. But there's also something equally amazing about an absolutely gorgeous and very, very good sounding audio presentation, like audio visual presentation happening in a beautiful room with a beautiful sound system and beautiful projections. Anderson being like an amazing example of this. The show is going to be amazing in that room because it's, when you have that nice of a space and that nice of a sound system and that good of a projection system, what it allows the audience to do is to suspend their disbelief completely and to give themselves into this world that we're creating. Because it really is a world. 80s Kids is a very intentionally created world, not just what's happening on stage, but like from the moment people enter the doors to the moment they leave for the night, every single moment of the experience is something that we've thought of really carefully and designed really carefully. I mean, from the music that's playing at walk-in. Can we talk about that? Should we have that be a secret a little bit? All right, it's a little bit of a secret. People, don't just show up 5 minutes before the show. Show up like an hour before the show, get a drink, have a seat, and listen to what's going on. There are some surprises for you there, and they're extremely rewarding. All of the design around this project, all of the merchandise and the stuff that's happening in the lobby, all the visuals that are happening on stage. It's a permission structure, I think, for people to come for a night and really from the moment they arrive, just let go of everything that's happening in the world, everything that's going on in their personal life, and just be present in a room full of other people who
are losing their mind.
Who are losing their mind. Yeah, the energy,
the joy, and the singing along, and
the energy for this is sky high. It's a neat experience. Everybody dresses up. So many people dress up in 80s gear. We encourage this by offering a freebie at our merchandise table for anybody who has shown up with 80s gear on. I mean, just put on a side ponytail if you don't have fingerless gloves. All good.
Chris, we expect a side ponytail from you, by the way.
I was going to say that might be difficult for some, like myself.
Yeah, but it's world building. 80s Kids at its core is an exercise in creating a world that we can all escape into together for a night. It's extremely joyful.
And I've noticed on some of the videos of your live performances that there's actually like dancing and people. Do you actually bring people up on stage to dance?
Yes, there's a specific moment in the show where I invite people to come up on stage, and I wasn't sure if people were going to respond to this or not when we debuted the show this past spring, but oh my gosh, did they ever. It's so fun. I won't spoil the moment, so when you come to the show you'll be surprised to hear it, but like
sometimes there's 30 people on stage.
Yeah. So. Except for I have to point out most nights it's a whole group of people on stage dancing with me, which is just so much fun. And like looking back at some of the videos we have, it's just so fun to see all these like middle-aged people just letting go and like dancing their butts off on stage. But I have to give a special shout out to the show we did in Minneapolis. They vary in a very northern Midwest way. Came up one at a time and then left stage and gave room for somebody else to come up on stage. And like they very politely took turns.
It was like 11 people dancing for 25 seconds each. It was really great. Very Midwest.
Prime Minnesota.
But And there's always people dancing all over the place too. When we look back at show video from each of the shows, like audience video that people have taken, stuff that we might not necessarily be aware of, there's people dancing kind of everywhere.
In the aisles, like,
just
yeah.
down front, really whatever. It's great. It's a good vibe.
And do you have to actually do 80s dancing? Because, I mean, there's, you know, a whole different genre of dance moves, I guess.
Yeah, you're right.
Totally. But no, I think the bottom line is you just, if you feel like moving your body, you move your body and it feels great. It doesn't matter how you do it.
Yeah, I'm a prime example of that. I'm not an amazing or gifted dancer, but there's a way to move your body joyfully with music that is good and healthy. I mean, I think there's probably no wrong way to do it if we're being honest about it. Yeah. That said, if anyone watching this knows how to do the robot, come up on stage when asked.
Awesome. And so one of the questions I typically ask is what do you want people to walk away with after the show? I'm getting the sense that you want them to walk away with joy, but is there anything else that you want to walk away with?
Yeah, I think the other sort of like theme for me with this show, and I hinted at this a little bit earlier when you asked about like, what was it about 80s music that meant so much to me at the time when I was a kid? I want people to walk away with, and I believe that they do with this show. They walk away with a sense of belonging that, it often feels, even as adults out here, certainly as a kid, we kind of felt sometimes like we were all alone. It doesn't change a whole lot when we're adults. Sometimes we feel like, am I the only one experiencing X, Y, or Z, and am I the only one, facing this world by myself here, facing all my stuff? And I want people to come and see all those other people around them dancing and singing and losing their minds to this music, and understand in a deeper way that, no, you're not alone and you belong. Weird as you might be, you belong here. And that's something that we experienced every single night on the tour we just wrapped up. It's pretty magical.
And I have an adjacent answer, which is that I think we both hope that people leave with a renewed sense of community, right? Yeah. That's sort of the slightly larger container for Shannon's answer, I think. The idea that not only do we belong, but we belong to each other and we belong to the people that we're doing this with. Mm-hmm. The world can be a difficult place. Being a human is hard. The human condition is hard. And being joyful in an intentional way in a room full of people, I think can leave us with the feeling that like we can do this. We can do this if we do it together. And that can feel really powerful.
Awesome. Amazing. And last question for you guys. One of the things that the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation does is we help nurture or encourage performers to sort of go out and try their hand at what they do. Like we have South Bay's Got Talent, which is a ongoing talent competition. And
I feel like one of the people on camera right now might be a dance competition winner from years past. Am I remembering that correctly?
That's a whole different topic.
Busted.
But one of the things I like to ask people is, for all those people who are thinking about taking on performing or touring as a gig or their job, what words of advice would you offer them?
Ooh, I've got an answer, but you go first.
No, you go first.
Okay, so I'll leave Shannon with the opportunity to do like the more like inspiring answer. But because I'm the technical person in our little two-person outfit here, let me give a slightly technical answer. Master your tech. Get really, really good at the actual nuts and bolts of what you're doing so that when you show it to people, you have something that's well thought through and undeniably good. So that you give people, again, an opportunity to suspend their disbelief. The idea, I think, with what we do with every show that we create is we work to create an entire world that you can genuinely buy into, that you can genuinely feel like you can just immerse yourself into for the time that you're there. And if there's stuff on a technical level that's not supporting that, or that's not working as well as it could be, or isn't as smooth as it could be, that can interrupt people's ability to suspend their disbelief, right? Like show experiences should be, I think, seamless. for whatever they are. I'm not saying that the particular type of show we do is the only way to do a show. There's a million ways to do a show, but whatever the experience that you're making is, it should be really well thought through on every single possible level, so that when you present it to people, you create something that they can believe without having to think about it.
Okay, I'll give the more ooey gooey answer. But that's my job around here. So I would say for anyone watching who's like wanting to explore their creative passion as, you know, in a more professional way, or just, you know, getting on stage for the first time even, or whatever it might be. I've been doing this for a long time, and I performing and writing music, that is. And I think that if I could go back and give myself advice in those early days, it would be to really follow and center what is lighting you up, and do that in as true a way to yourself as you can. Because there's a lot of pressure. It's, for whatever reason, when it comes to art making, and when you kind of move into sort of the more like professional spaces around that, there's a lot of pressure or temptation to contort or bend yourself in ways that you think other people want for you to be and present to the world, you know? And I've had to learn this lesson over and over the hard way for many, many years, that always, always, always the stuff that actually resonates most with audiences is the stuff that is most true to me. And so going back to that always as sort of like the lodestar, the guiding light, to you know, and a lot of times it is the stuff that is bringing me the most joy, you know, that is the thing that when I bring that to the world, the people who encounter it also find their joy in it, they resonate with it more deeply. And you know, that's true of this project too. It's weird though that this is the first ever project we've done that's not original music, and yet it is such an authentic expression of where we're at right now in our lives and in the world, and what we want to offer the world. It is so like it sounds cheesy to say it, but it just feels like it is a completely aligned experience, you know? And I believe that that's one of the reasons we're seeing people resonating so much with it, because we can bring ourselves so fully to it because of that alignment, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that most people say when I ask that question, is to be authentic to your creative self and just create what you're passionate about. Because I oftentimes, I mean, trying to mentor other people or kids who are, you know, wanting to do something, you ask them what's your overall goal, and they were like, I want to win a Grammy. It's like, well, that's not a goal. I mean, I guess that's a goal post, but it's like that's not why you do what you do.
No, the stuff that is outside of your ability to make happen is always going to be elusive, right? So like to win a Grammy, like ultimately that's not up to you, right? Like ultimately that's someone else's power to give you. But the stuff that is sustaining for an artist is the stuff that we have the power to work on and pursue and achieve. And so those goals being more like, you know, finding a true expression of yourself and connecting genuinely with other people when you offer that to them, that's within everybody's power to achieve. And those are the sustaining type of goals, I think, in the life of a working artist anyway.
You know, for anyone like younger who might be seeing this, I would say this. It's absolutely natural and human to want validation, but it's not a great idea, I've learned, at least in my personal experience, to look for it externally. The validation that you actually want, I think, comes from a practice of learning to be at peace with yourself as a person, you know? And once you get to a place where that's the case for you, you'll probably also, perhaps not coincidentally, find that you're starting to make some really authentic work that will resonate with a larger audience.
Amen. Amen.
There's your moment of Zen.
Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I do appreciate it. And we will look forward to seeing you October 4th. at the Armstrong Theater for 80s kids, and everyone dress in your best 80s gear and your side ponytails if you have them. And thank you guys for taking the time.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Appreciate you.